And it's really funny because every time a name is mentioned, you get that bunch of fans that think, "Oh, well, that'd be brilliant," and you get the other bunch of fans, "No, I don't want him." "Oh no, please somebody else, please somebody else."
And what's better than that is every time there's a rumour, someone photoshops them in a Blues kit.
Yeah.
So I've saw Graham Potter in a Blues kit. I mean, were you telling me just before that you saw Jurgen Klopp in a Blues kit?
Well,
as well?
Jurgen Klopp outside Greg's in the retail park opposite St.Andrews.
So welcome back to Small Heath Alliance FC. And on Tuesday, as Blues fans, we all found out, sadly, Tony Mowbray will not be returning as Birmingham City manager and has given up, effective immediately, his role as the first team manager. And I, for one, I think I speak on behalf of the fan base that we wish Tony all the best in his recovery. And I think we're all happy in the context of he now gets to recover in his own time, on his own terms. And as I say, we wish nothing but the best for Tony during his recovery and for his family. But now that leaves a big gap in the managerial position at Birmingham City. So during this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the candidates, a little bit about the rumours, a little bit about what we've read on social media today. So I'm going to hand it straight over to Dad. And Dad, over to you. What are your thoughts on Tony Mowbray and some of the candidates we've been hearing on social media recently?
Well, to be honest, I think like a lot of Blues fans, I was hoping that he'd return. I was in the back of my mind, I always felt he would, and it was a bit of a shock actually when I heard the news that he was stepping down. I think he's done it for the right reasons. He's obviously done it to get a full recovery from his medical condition, and that I think his decision was also to allow the club to move on as well. So I think it's a very unselfish thing that he's actually done, but. We only had him for a few games, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I always felt with him that he was always gonna get us to where we needed to be. He just before he stepped down for his medical condition. We'd just come off the back of 2 victories, and we appeared to be going in the right direction. Then, of course, all of a sudden it happened very, very quickly. And then, as we know the rest of the story. But all I can do is thank him for the short time that he was with us at the club. And I think even in the short time that he was with us, he's always going to have fond memories in the hearts of Blues fans for what he did. And he always felt like he was a well-respected manager. I'm going to miss him. It sounds weird that a manager that's only sort of been there for such a short bit of time, but I'm actually going to miss him, and I genuinely was hoping that he would be the one that would take us, next season.
I think we've made it evidently clear, haven't we? We felt like Tony Mowbray was the perfect man to get us out of League One, and I'm gutted. When I read the news, I was gutted. I was really sad, but as I said in the intro, happy that now he gets to recover in his own time, on his own terms, with his family. And as I say, we wish nothing but the best for Tony. And I've just got three points I want to mention about Tony, and then we'll move on to what we've been hearing in the news recently. And one of them was that, for a manager who's only really in post for sort of 6 weeks, what an impact he had.
Yeah.
And, the connection he had with the fans, I just want to reference a few here so I don't miss it. He created a real connection. The fans really love it. They're calling him Mugger, Uncle Tone. Yeah. And when the news was announced, someone put a picture of them in Costco with bags of Revels all over them going, it was tongue-in-cheek, and it was I can't handle it. I really miss him already. And as I say, it was a bit of a joke, but really had that connection with the fan base, I felt, even with that 6-week stint. Really like his style of football, very progressive, very front-footed. I think he's a great manager.
Yeah.
He knows football, very knowledgeable, and just an all-round humble guy. I liked his demeanour. I liked his style. All the footballers at Blues spoke very fondly of him. I heard one player say we could listen to his stories for hours. Quite a charismatic guy. So he's a family man, a nice guy, and as I say, I'm gonna miss him, even though it was only that 6-week stint. And Tony, genuinely, I wish you nothing but the best and a speedy recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, the reality is, Matt, that we need to find a new manager now. There's a vacancy there. And that's what the main purpose of this video really is, to look at the various names that have been mentioned and now have a quick chat about a few of them, what we think. It's interesting, obviously looking at social media. Social media's just gone nuts. And it's really funny because every time a name is mentioned, you get that bunch of fans that think, "Oh, well, that'd be brilliant," and you get the other bunch of fans, "No, I don't want him." "Oh no, please somebody else, please somebody else." So I think.
And what's better than that is every time there's a rumour, someone photoshops them in a Blues kit. So I've saw Graham Potter in a Blues kit. I mean, were you telling me just before that you saw Jurgen Klopp in a Blues kit?
Jurgen Klopp outside Greg's in the retail park opposite St.Andrews. Yeah, Jurgen Klopp in a Blues kit, Blues emblem, Blues logo on his.
I've heard he loves Small Heath.
Well, if you're here there, Jurgen, if you're watching it, you're welcome at Blues. But in all seriousness, obviously we do know that there's a certain amount of names that are getting prominence, and a lot of names have been mentioned. So I want to discuss a few today. Yeah. And what I've done as well, Matt, I've done a bit of research on the various names of managers that been linked with a few statistics as well, because I think a really good good measure of how successful these managers are in terms of win ratio is exactly that. So some of the stats I want to give you when we talk about names, there'll be average points per game, so that we be how many games they managed their team, how many games they won, just divide one by the other. A good measure is, for example, if a manager was to get 1.5 points per match on an average, that means in a 46 game season that would be 69 points. If it's 2 points per average, then it's going to be 92 points. So anything really above, around those levels are going to be what we'll be discussing.
I think a lot of Blues fans are familiar with that because do you remember when Eustace was in charge, he had a X amount point per game, and then when Mowbray came in and Rowett came in, obviously we'll exclude Rooney and Venus. People were working out all the averages, and actually if we kept up with the 3 managers that did well, we would have ended up mid-table or above. So I think people are familiar with the average points per game.
I think that's the only way, because obviously a lot of these people we're going to talk about, we don't know huge amounts about it. So therefore,
this will be really interesting.
A good metric of how many points they've got on average per match is a real good measure. So I'm going to start off. I'll throw a name at you that's really highly in prominence and linked at the moment. Is Liam Rosenior.
Well, again, this is only going off social media. I've heard he's actually said he's not interested in the Birmingham job. I did read that a little bit earlier because I feel like he's young. He's hungry. He did a good job at Hull. But actually, people are still calling that tenure as a failure because of the money he had, the players he brought in, and the fact he didn't make the playoffs. However, I actually think he's a very good manager. And if I turn my phone on tomorrow morning and it said Rosenior is now the Birmingham City manager, I'd be pretty chuffed with that appointment.
Yeah, I think so as well. We saw his Hull side. His Hull side gave us our first home defeat last season. In fact,
it was a bad game.
It was
from Blues' point of view.
Yeah, but they were good as well. Good. And I like the style of football. They're very progressive. Let me give you some stats for Liam Rosenior.
Also, sorry, before you give the stats, he was the assistant manager with Rooney at Derby, wasn't he?
Yeah, just about to say that.
Sorry.
So assistant manager with Derby. Then he became caretaker manager when Rooney left. He was in charge for 12 games as caretaker manager of Derby. Won 7, drawn 2, lost 3. That gives an average points per game, 1.92. That's pretty good. Then he became manager of Hull City. 78 games, 27 wins, 28 draws, 23 defeats, with the points per game of 1.4. So slightly below. So not as impressive as Derby, but he was building a team there. What impressed me about him, why I think I would like him. I know what you say, Matt, about. I've heard that as well. He's not interested, but you never know in football.
No, you don't.
And if we were to get him,
he could have been saying that because at the time when that statement went out, Mowbray hadn't actually officially went off, so he could have been saying that out of respect to the situation.
Possibly, but also as well, I think in his mind he'll know that there's going to be lots of offers for him, so there's going to be a lot of competition for him. And does he want to come down to League One?
Before we go into any more managers, can I just discuss a style of approach to some extent, because I feel like we've got 2 trails of thought here. We've got, do we get someone with a high profile, good experience, possibly looking to make the drop, or do we pick someone who's going to start the project and then see us through for a couple of years? A bit like Kieran McKenna from Ipswich. He had a couple of jobs at United and Tottenham, but Ipswich is his first job. So Ipswich actually technically took a gamble on him, and actually it's turned out well. So I think some people are looking at sort of League One, League Two managers going, we should take a gamble, we should take a risk, and let's see whether they're in it for the long term. And then some people are going, let's get a more experienced manager, let's hope they drop down and bring us up. And I'm torn between the two. I don't know which direction I'm going, but do you agree there's kind of those 2 different directions that the club should be looking at?
Absolutely. My preference would be to have a manager that can develop and build a team and take us through the leagues.
Yeah.
I'd
a 5-year goal to get to the Premier League.
Yeah, because the club have actually went and got a name, and look, that didn't turn out well.
It's true, yeah.
So I think that we should be looking at them, and that's what I'm saying. I think sometimes when names are bandied about, this is the reaction that fans get. Oh, don't like the idea. Oh, it's an unheard of manager, or one that people don't know, and obviously there's a negative reaction to that. But actually, these are types of managers that could end up being exactly what we need.
Exactly. Kieran McKenna had to start from somewhere. Rosenior had to start from somewhere. So if you take a punt, and again, I'm sure you're going to come on to these people, but the Stockport manager, David Chandler's in the rumours, and that's the theory, is if we took a punt on someone like that, they could then take us through the league. So I'm just bouncing off you.
I'm smiling because he's one manager I ain't got stats for, but I have heard his name as well. I mean, to be honest with you, Matt, we try and keep our videos to a certain length because obviously, we want to try and
we'd be all day, wouldn't we?
Yeah,
We discussed
exactly.
every
So
manager.
I've picked the common ones. I have heard his name banded around. He's on my list at the end, but there's a few without stats. I was going to say at the end, by the way, these will be mentioned as well. But yeah, so a manager like that who's brought a team up shows that they can build a team. So let's go back just to Rosina. So from your perspective,
I'd be happy with that.
You'd be happy.
No, in fact, I think that's too much of a lighter word. I'd be buzzing with Rosina.
I think he would be if we could get him, and I think it's whether or not he'd be prepared to come down to League One because he's going to get a lot of offers. Yeah. I would love to see him as well. Yeah. Okay, next one I've got on my list, and if we go through the ones I got on my list, and then obviously you can react to those, and then if you've got any others as well.
Our lists are going to be very similar naturally.
Okay. So the next one is somebody we're very familiar with, is Gary Rowett.
Gary Rowett. Yeah.
Well, what's your thoughts on him?
He's getting a lot of stick on social media in terms of the Blues fans are going anyone but Rowett, not Rowett, not Rowett, and I get it. I think he's an underwhelming choice. Gary Rowett's an underwhelming choice. Let me just say that. However, he is a safe pair of hands.
Term I was going to use.
He's a safe pair of hands, isn't he? Yeah. But do we want safe pair of hands? I mean, again, there's two trailer thoughts on this one. He would steady. I feel like this club has been in so much chaos for the last 10 years. Would it be the end of the world if Gary Rowett came in and just stabled the ship for a couple of seasons for us? And I think he actually would get us out of League One. But coming back to what we said, Dad, the project long term, I think Gary Rowett could be the man to get us out of League One. He's not the man to get us from the Championship into the Premier League. So I think there'd almost be two rebuilds if we did bring Gary Rowett in.
Something come to mind, Matt, is when you mentioned in the last video we did, you mentioned such importance about stability. And I think just getting a manager in that's just going to steady the ship for a little bit is not really what we need. We need now a manager that we see as a mid to long term manager, someone's going to stay with us and build. Do you want some stats on Gary Rowett?
Yeah, of course, yeah. But I was just going to say, just quickly, you mentioned Rosina and there's probably a couple of other big names coming in. They would always be my sort of first choice with if we're talking in the context of Gary Rowett. But if we're talking, Steve Bruce or Alex Neil, me personally, I would rather Gary Rowett in that position. So it all depends on where we are in the scale of scouting for these managers.
Yeah, well, we know a bit about Gary, don't we, Gary Rowett?
I like him, by the way.
He started off as assistant manager at Burton, and then he became the full manager of Burton. Had 135 games, won 62, drawn 30, lost 43. Average points per game 1.6. Then that's where we got him from first time round. Then we took him from Burton as our manager. Had 106 games as our manager in the first round, won 42, drew 32, lost 32, 1.49 average points per game. Then he went to Derby as manager, 1.6 average points per match. Then he went to Stoke City, didn't do so well, 1.34 average points per game. Then he became Millwall manager, and this has been his longest stint as a manager. And he had an average points per game of 1.45, so just shy of 1.5. And then as caretaker manager for us, he's just had 8 games, won 3, drawn 2, lost 3, 1.38. I think that sums up the fact what you said, really. He's a steady pair of hands. One thing he noticed in a short period of time with us, he tightened us up at the back. Yeah. So the only issue I would have with Gary Rowett is it the style of football that the club really want moving forward? Yeah. Because he's more of a defensive minded.
I think if he let's just say tomorrow Blues posted Gary Rowett is the manager. Me and you would be behind him. We'd buy our season tickets. It wouldn't, in my opinion, that wouldn't be the end of the world. I know other Blues fans have other opinions, but I would want 100% attacking-minded coaches around him. Because he's so defensive naturally, I'd want him to really push the boat out and get us some nice. I mean, I don't even care whether it's sexy football. Just get us out of League One, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. But I would like, if Gary Rowett was in charge, I want to see more attacking football.
I think the difference with Gary Rowett this time round, though, is that he's going to have the ability to build a team.
He can spend some money.
He's not. Obviously, there's so many players gone out now. Like we've lost. Or have left, or we've released. So we'll see. So if Gary Rowett was appointed, it wouldn't for me. I would get behind him.
Same here.
I'd get behind him.
I think as a conclusive statement, underwhelming appointment, but I'd get behind him, and I think he could get us out of League One.
Yeah, he could. Okay. Next one is a bit of a wild card here, and somebody I thought of would make a great mate. He's one of our ex-players, Lee Carsley.
I thought you were going to say Steve Bruce.
Well, he's on the list of linked.
Because he has been linked. You know what? I can't comment too much on Lee Carsley because I'm not going to lie. I haven't done massive amounts of homework, but I know he's been the England under-21 coach.
Yeah. So let me tell you a bit about him.
Yeah, please do.
Because since he left Blues, he's been he's had a lot of jobs actually. He was caretaker manager at Coventry in 2012, 2 stints, assistant manager at Sheffield United. manager of the Brentford under-21s, then caretaker manager of Brentford, then assistant manager of Brentford. Then he had various England roles, England under-19 man. He's done a lot of coaching. Manchester City under-18s, and then he was the Birmingham under-21 manager in 2017, and he actually became caretaker manager for 3 games for us in 2017. Then he became our assistant manager in 2017. Then he's gone back to England. But what reason that he sort of thrown out to me? Firstly, his average as England under-21 manager, which is his current role, average points per game 2.41.
Wow.
Now you could argue that that's internationals, and obviously it's under-21, and therefore some of the opposition is going to be the weaker nations, which is why it's so high. But that's still pretty good. So he's only, he's had 29 games as England under-21 manager, won 23,
Wow.
drawn 1, lost 5.
I was going to say, to get an average point score of 2+, you have to be winning some serious amount of games, don't you?
Yeah, but the reason I thought about him was that I know clearly he hasn't got much league experience, but he's one of our ex-players, so he does know the club. He has been our assistant manager before. And maybe, we're talking about having a manager that can develop a team and bring us through. I think he could potentially be a bit of a wildcard selection.
Well, he's very popular on social media. I mentioned about people saying Rabbit being an underwhelming choice. A couple of a section of the Blues fans are quite excited by the idea of him. So again, if that was appointed, I'd be happy enough with that. Get behind him. Interesting choice.
Okay, next one I've got on here is one that's been linked very heavily with the Sunderland vacancy, and that's Will Still.
Okay.
Okay. Now this guy. If I give you the stats first, and you can give me a reaction to him.
Please do.
So this guy, he's had lots of experience. He's more known as a coach, a development coach, but he's Belgian, and he has been manager of Belgian team Liège, with an average points per game of 2.6.
Wow.
Points per game, and then if you go through the various teams,
2.6 is that like winning literally the majority of
8 games, won 7 and lost 1.
Oh, there you go.
That was as manager of Liège. Then he was assistant manager. Then he was a manager of a team called Beerschot, and then assistant manager. Then the manager of Beerschot with only an average of 1.33, but that was only a few games. But this is where he really made his name. Now he became the manager of Stade Reims, which is the French team. He was known for his modern thinking, and he's very, very well respected, particularly all over Europe in relation to the style of play and the ideas he has. I've seen
How old
him.
is
He is 31.
Wow.
So he's young. 31, yeah. He's got a UEFA A license as well, so he's done all his badges. And again, I know that Sunderland are heavily interested in him. It's nothing confirmed, but I read something today that he's been heavily linked with that post, so he may not be available for us. But
well, those stats speak for themselves, don't they? And if the fact if Sunderland are linked with him, a top end of the table championship team, I don't think we can turn our nose up at that if he's willing to. And I think with Blues as well, we have a slightly different angle in that we can sell them the long-term project. There is money to spend. The owners have a Premier League goal in mind in X amount of years, so we can really sell that to managers if they're thinking, I don't know whether I want to go to League One. If they get their mind around a long-term project, it could change their mindset, and you can't turn your nose up at stats like that. I mean, why not?
No, again, I think he's very, very highly sought after as well, so that'd be interesting. So the next one I've got on my list, which has been, banded around on social media, and Bolton fans are not going to thank me for this, is their manager, Ian Evatt. Now, Ian Evatt is a 42 years old. He was caretaker manager of Chesterfield. Then he was manager of Barrow. So when he was manager of Barrow, he had average points per game of 1.6. And as Bolton manager, he has been Bolton manager for since 2020, so quite a number of years now, for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And he's got in those 4 years, he's got an average points per game of 1.73.
Wow. Okay.
So
that's interesting why they haven't got promoted then, isn't it? With a record like that, and I know they've just missed out on the playoffs final last week against Oxford, who will be playing Championship football next season. But that's quite an impressive record, isn't it?
It is, and he's the type of manager again. This type of manager, young sort of hungry manager that could build a team and develop them as well.
I saw one of the Bolton. I must admit, I didn't follow the playoffs die hard in League One, but I did see a couple of goals from before the final, and a couple of the Bolton goals I saw, they were really good. He's got him playing some really nice football. So.
But again, he's the Bolton manager, so he's not even available, but he's linked, and it's whether or not that type of.
Yeah.
We would go for a manager at another club.
Yeah.
Next on my list is Steve Cooper.
Well, I think Steve Cooper would be at the top of most Blues fans' lists.
Yeah, he's one of them ones that you think, well, he's probably not going to want to come.
He
to
wasn't
the League
interested when we were Championship, so
No.
I very, very doubt he's
Yeah.
going to be interested.
Well, we
in
won't
League
talk
One.
about his points per match or anything like that. But his name is bandied about as well. And here's another one that you might remember for blast from the past: Ali Cisse.
Oh, okay, Senegal manager.
Just,
And I tell you what, when I was growing up as a kid, he was playing for Blues, and I was about 11 or 12. I loved Cisse.
Yeah.
What a player, getting stuck in, big challenges in the centre mid, cracking player. And I always remember when that tragedy happened in his own country, the Tilton held up the Senegal,
I thought about that
Senegal
today.
flag.
Yeah.
And I used to look at that picture, trying to pinpoint where we used to sit behind the goal. Interesting. Again, have you got some stats on Ali Cisse?
Well, it's all international because he's not got much league experience. But with Senegal, he's got a average. This is with the Senegal national team. He's been in charge for 97 games of the Senegal national team. With an average points per game of 2.16.
Good.
Now, there's some issues there with me. I mean, my heart would say definitely I want him because he's one of our ex-players. He knows Birmingham City. But then my head's going to tell me that he is not got any league experience and it's a very different style of football international compared to that. So he's a bit of a wild card, to be honest. Yeah. But it's somebody that I...
Again, loved him as a player. He wouldn't be very high up on my manager want list. I must admit. I'm just going to put that out there for Ali Cisse.
Okay. Next is somebody who we know has already spoken to Blues. Next, Alex Neil.
Alex Neil. Yeah. So he's actually the one. Just before we started recording, I was having a little bit of a flick, and he's all over the Second Tier Podcast X page. He's all over a couple of rumour pages. So I think actually he's the one at the moment who's actually sat down with the club possibly and had a meeting, had an interview.
Yeah.
So
they call it initial talks.
The initial talks, that's the one.
But
so, that literally just could be a conversation.
Well, I was going to say that to the Blues fans. You see initial talks. That doesn't mean say he's going to sign tomorrow. The Blues are going to be talking to a lot of managers, so they've got to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, and for me, Alex Neil's in the same sort of category as Gary Rowett for me. Very similar kind of category in the context of I think he would get us out of League One. I think he'd do a decent job, but he wouldn't take us to the next level out of the Championship.
You say that because a lot of people, when you say the name Alex Neil, are going to remember that really bad spell he had at Stoke.
It's immediately what comes to mind, isn't it?
But he got Sunderland promoted from League One. He got Norwich promoted from the Championship to the Premier League. And before that,
what year was that? The Norwich year that you got? I'm just curious.
He was manager of Norwich in 2015.
Okay.
His average points per game at Stoke is not very good. It's 1.2, but we know that was a bad spell. At Sunderland, when he was manager, it's 1.88. That's not bad. Preston, he was manager for 4 years at Preston at 1.39. I mean, to be honest, his average points per game at some of the clubs doesn't seem overly impressive. But he's a player that knows how to get teams promoted. And yeah, he wouldn't be the most attractive option. I get that. And I know there's it's like a vanilla with Alex Neil, what you read, isn't it? People either love it or hate it.
It's kind of like Rowett again.
But if he was to be appointed, he does know League One. And, he also knows how to get teams out of the Championship as well. So
I have no doubt he would get us out of League One. And maybe it's a slightly different context because he will have a bit of a budget behind him. He can bring the players in he wants to. He can play the style of football he wants to. That does make a massive difference. Whereas, you talk Stoke, you talk Preston, to some extent, you talk quite financially strapped clubs. Whereas Norwich would have had a bit of money to spend. Sunderland possibly would have had a bit of money to spend. And he did quite well at those clubs. So maybe if he has a bit of a budget behind him, he might do quite well. But for me, again, just calling it what it is, I think I speak for a decent amount of Blues fans, a bit of an underwhelming choice. However, again, do we give the argument of a safe pair of hands?
Exactly. When you look at his stats and you look at what he's already done, then maybe, it might not be that
I'm
bad.
not against Alex Neil, by the way. I just think, this club has ambition and let's just say 5. I mean, by the way, I'm speculating here in terms of I haven't heard officially 5-year Premier League goal. I'm just saying that would make logical sense for the owners to have a Premier League goal 5 years. I mean, do they want to start from scratch, have a younger, fresher manager, take a bit of a gamble, someone who could see the project through long term? I don't know. Alex Neil wouldn't fit that description for me, but I'm not against it. I just think that would be a bit of
he's an experienced manager,
uninspiring choice.
He knows the league. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and by the way, Blues fans, when we're mentioning these names, we're not suggesting that these are the candidates that we favour or at best. We're just trying to sort of look at all the options about what they could do for us in League One and beyond. Now only on the basis of time. I'm just going to throw 3 names at you.
Please
okay?
do.
I'm not going to give you any stats.
Okay.
Okay, and just give me your just very quick opinion on all 3. Okay,
Yeah.
Ashley Cole.
No.
Frank Lampard.
No.
Scott Parker.
Yes.
Okay, right.
So
okay.
I'd love to have Scott Parker. I think he's a brilliant manager, but Frank Lampard and Ashley Cole, for me, they're too much of a big gamble, and it's just got Rooney syndrome written all over it, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. It has. I agree. I think Ashley Cole, he's not got any experience as a manager, and I think the club are not going to experiment in that way because of what they want us to be. Just to go to Scott Parker, just very quickly, you obviously said yes to him. So obviously he's been assistant manager at Fulham before he was named their manager. Only had an average points per game of 1.3, but remember that was in the Premier League, and that was at a time where Fulham didn't have the squad that they've got now.
Yeah.
So actually, that isn't actually as bad as it sounds.
Contextually, that's not a bad point per game ratio when you think about everything he had.
It's pretty good. And then Bournemouth, when he became manager of Bournemouth, average points per game of 1.82.
There you go.
So so that's
I like him as well. I like his, you know, when he's in an interview, he's very professional. He's very intelligent. I like Scott Parker. I think if he was on the cards, I think a lot of Blues fans would be happy with him. But
yeah. And I'm just going to list four names, then we'll finish. Okay, Graham Potter. We're not going to get him, but he'd be brilliant, wouldn't he? David Wagner, who has been just let go by Norwich, and then obviously Steve Bruce and Darren Ferguson as well. They're all names that have been sort of mentioned into the pot. So there's quite a mix there. Any thoughts on any of them?
So Steve Bruce, for me, is an immediate no. Graham Potter would be the Dreamland appointment. Wagner would... I wouldn't turn down Wagner. I think he did a decent job at Norwich. I mean...
He's got a pretty good record.
Yeah, he's got a pretty good record. And Darren Ferguson, also not for me.
Okay, right. With Steve Bruce, I know there's a lot of talk and chatter about Steve Bruce, but to me, you know, he'd done well when he was with us first time, got us promoted to the Premier League, but actually, I think the way he was so defensive, he ended up getting us relegated. We got relegated from the Premier League under Steve Bruce because we didn't score enough goals. We don't want that.
Yeah. It was just. Do you remember that season? It was just lumping up to Heskey. That was the only plan. That was the only plan we had.
Plan A, but there's no plan B.
Exactly.
So definitely thank you, Steve Bruce, for what you've done for us previously. But definitely, I wouldn't think that would be what the owners now want for us moving forward.
I was going to say, I hope that didn't come across disrespectfully. Steve Bruce,
it was.
He's actually got my prime during school. We were in the Premier League, and I have nothing but amazing memories from when Steve Bruce was the manager. However, come on, we can't go back there now. We're moving forward as a club. For me, Steve Bruce is a big no-no.
Yeah. So there's lots of sort of managers there that have been mentioned and stuff like that. And it is interesting the way that the Blues fans react to them as well. And we know that there's no perfect manager out there. We just thought we'd give you some of our thoughts and give you some stats and let you know what we thought.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just heard our opinions, Blues fans, on some of the speculation and the rumours on social media. Let us know what your thoughts are. Please drop us a comment below. Are you impressed with some of the links to the managers? Do you have some ideas of yourselves? As I say, please drop us a comment and let us know. And I just want to finish again just by saying, we do wish Tony Mowbray all the best in his recovery, and we are glad now he gets that time to rest with his family and recover in his own time. But please, if you did like this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Please check us out on our social media channel, on our X page, and our Instagram page. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you don't miss any future content all about Birmingham City. And me and Dad will see you on the next video.